You know, I have no aspirations to being a drama gaming YouTuber, but if I don't say these things, my head is going to explode. Okay, so I'm sure as you've ascertained by looking at the title and thumbnail of this video, I've got one last video in me, barring some crazy apocalyptic, future events regarding this, talking about the good old Mig Switch. As you may have heard by now, a couple days back, Nintendo fired off some lawsuits. One of the two lawsuits were against a gentleman in the United States who ran a site called Modded Hardware. And that site was dedicated to not only modifying people's Nintendo Switch consoles. You'd send them in, and he would modify it so that you could play homebrew things and or illicitly obtained games. He was also a reseller of the infamous Mig Switch. Nintendo has come around and has served him with a pretty expansive lawsuit covering pretty much all camera angles of his operations. I will say that in reading through the lawsuit, it appears that one of the lesser wise things this individual did was offering to, in fact, not only sell the Mig Switch, but preloaded with oodles and oodles of pirated Switch games. Nonetheless, the deed is done, and so is this dude. I would suggest he is probably going to be losing in an open and shut case. But there was one interesting aspect of the filing when I was reading through it that really got my attention, and I think it's kind of been underreported or undercommented among the types of relief that Nintendo of America is seeking against this individual, requiring defendant to provide Nintendo of America with any and all invoices, purchase orders, shipping confirmations, receipts, and any other documentation reflecting revenue received by defendant in connection with the circumvention devices, hacked consoles, circumvention services, or any other products or services that infringe or violate any of Nintendo of America's or affiliates' rights is described therein. Yikes. So they are basically looking to compel him to turn over all the records. And obviously, I don't think this is a case where he can simply flush them down the toilet. There will, for example, be an electronic trail, electronic forensics that can be, I'm sure, obtained. The long and short of this is if you bought a Mig Switch from this fella, ooh, yikes. I'd be a little bit nervous right now. Look, this isn't to say that this is a slam dunk guarantee that Nintendo is going to go after each and every person that bought a Mig Switch or sent in a console to be modded, but I gotta tell you, I wouldn't feel super comfortable either. There is precedent in the world, especially in the United States, in terms of copyright protection and maybe a little overzealous copyright protection of companies going after individual users with threats and or actual litigation. But you know what? Here's the thing. When I look at this, I say to myself, okay, if you went into this and you decided to send money to this or any reseller for a Mig Switch, provided your home address, your payment method, so on and so forth, you accepted the risk that was involved. I think anyone with an adult level IQ, and even the most basic understanding of how the world works, is that regardless of how you weigh in on the concept of piracy or anything like that, it doesn't really matter, because I'm not here to change anyone's mind about whether or not piracy is okay or not okay. But regardless of where you stand, you have to understand that you are taking risks by quote unquote poking the bear in purchasing a device that, look, at the end of the day, if we're all being honest with each other, this wasn't meant to be a device strictly to back up your Switch games. I know that's what it's sold as, and what everyone likes to gaslight themselves into thinking is the only real use for it. We all know this is primarily a device that allows you to play games that you downloaded off the internet, someone else's games. So when you bought this from someone in the U.S., being in the U.S., through the U.S. payment systems, you had to assume that there was some risk involved. So I have to be honest, I'm not going to be, providing any comfort. I'm not going to be one of those YouTubers that goes and hits the fainting couches and says, oh man, Nintendo are just awful, terrible people. I can't believe they're picking on people. Folks, whether you like it or not, your feelings don't matter in this case. Again, I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion, but you take certain risks when you do certain things. So if you decide you're going to sail the high seas in such a high-profile manner, removing yourself from any concept of anonymity along the way, well, you might just get burned. In this case, of course, this fella that chose of his own free will to be a reseller of this product is going to pay the price. I had indicated that I was convinced that this was going to happen over the last couple of videos I made about this subject. I was duly flamed in, just torched in the comments. I was ratioed to record, probably the Hall of Fame ratio levels. But at the end of the day, I hate to say it, that's what ended up happening. See, a lot of people that are very much in the pro-piracy movement also have this little problem where they're incapable of understanding the consequences of actions. Just because you believe that something is okay or ethical doesn't mean that you are shielded from those who see another way taking action against you. And I think this sense of self-immunity from any kind of consequences is going to backfire. And quite frankly, I do feel bad for a lot of people in this camp. It doesn't matter what I think about piracy or whether I agree with them or not. I feel bad that a lot of people just made some very poor decisions. And speaking of poor decisions, that brings me to the content creators that are covering the Mig Switch story or the concept of the Mig Switch. When this news came out and broke that these lawsuits hit, I did see a number of content creators create content about it. I saw one content creator that kind of rushed and was first to the scene, had gotten a copy of the complaint and did some analysis on it, looking through it. Did, I think, mention in passing the whole concept of Nintendo asking for all the receipts and documents, but didn't really spend a lot of time on it, and just was looking at it. Kind of the vibe I got was, man, boy, I gotta tell you, I can't believe this happened. Boy, Nintendo is really something. And I kind of get that, because I can see content creators who understand that a large amount of their following are very pro-piracy. And the last thing they can do is come at this from a perspective of, well, that was something that everyone saw coming, or anything that might trigger or upset those audiences. So it's kind of a weird position to be in. I saw another content creator kind of like almost laugh it off a little bit and make jokes that, I guess maybe we're going to prison. And again, I get it. It's your prerogative. You can cover this any way you want. But, it's an interesting play, especially because I don't know if this particular content creator was aware that Nintendo is basically going to find out the names and addresses of everyone that bought one, including this particular content creator who indicated that he had done so. So again, hey, I don't want anything bad to happen to these people. Let me just be very clear. I'm not wishing any ill will on anyone. I don't want anyone to get screwed up, but I find it to be an interesting play, the way some folks in the content creation space are covering it. Of course, another content creator I would have expected to be all over it has been Radio Silent so far. A content creator that does daily news stories about this. You figure out who you think I might be talking about. I'm not dropping names because I'm not looking for wars. I'm just looking to make some observations. So an interesting way of kind of reacting to this news. And I got to tell you something. I think a word of caution here. And I don't know if it's going to be heated or heard or disregarded or what have you, but I got to get it off my chest, like I said in the beginning of the video. From the content creator's perspective, I think that you have to be very careful with subject matters like this and topics like this, because I don't think Nintendo is done. I don't think they're just going to fire off a couple of lawsuits. Okay, we shut down the distributors in jurisdictions we have an impact on. For example, they're not going to necessarily be able to shut down folks in China or Russia or whoever that are doing this, but in the United States, sure, easy target, low-hanging fruit. I don't think they're just going to declare, hang the mission accomplished banner outside of Nintendo America's campus and call it a day. No, they're going to continue on this, because now they're going to be saying to themselves in the Nintendo's legal, warriors war room, they're going to be saying, all right, what's the next step? And if I was in that room, and I'm not trying to advise Nintendo, I'm not taking sides, I got to tell you, they have to be thinking to themselves, well, we shut down the people we can shut down, these things are still going to be manufactured in places that are kind of outside of our purview. So what do? Well, the next step is to limit awareness of this thing. If the normies, so to speak, the mass audiences don't know it exists, they're not going to buy it. So what's the next step? Go after people that are creating awareness about it. And that gets into now the content creator space. They're going to have a much easier time going after YouTube creators than, for example, Reddit or other venues where it's nigh impossible to get, for example, Reddit shut down. There are Reddits with openly active with some of the most heinous and disgusting topics you can imagine. So they're not necessarily going to have success there, but they will certainly have a lot of success going after a platform like YouTube, where you've got hundreds of millions of people, casual people. And if they're learning about the existence of these devices, well, Nintendo's not going to be happy with that. So right or wrong, and I'm not saying that I hope they do this, but I suspect that they're going to go after content creators that are creating and raising awareness. And I think it's one thing to report from a news, perspective that, this device was created, it's controversial, so on and so forth. And it's another to say, let's do a detailed review of, for example, the Mig Switch. Let's talk about all the features, how it works, and hey, here's the places that you can get it. I think that's a line you cross as a content creator between doing legitimate journalism and I'm not going to say advocacy, but I'm just going to say creating extensive awareness to the average person. The average person's going to, watch a news story that something exists and isn't necessarily going to be motivated to go pick one up. But if you're doing a detailed review of it, well, that's a different situation there. And again, I think Nintendo is at some point going to start coming after creators that are doing these sort of things. The last thing I would be looking to do in these times is doing detailed information reviews and affiliate links to purchase these items that they sell offshore that have 10,000 games, 15,000 games, 20,000 games loaded on it. You know what devices I'm talking about. And there are more than one. There's multiple content creators who make as a large part of their content getting their hands on these things and showing them off. And again, actually being bold enough to put affiliate links to them, earning money. Look, you get one of these devices with 15,000 games on it. There's no way on God's green earth you can rationalize that there's anything other than piracy. These are not all licensed games. They're not all cheap homebrews. They're advertised as the ROM sets of various platforms. There's no way it's on the up and up. And it absolutely stuns me that there are a lot of content creators that get away with basically promoting this stuff. But I don't think that that's a gravy train that's going to stay on the tracks much longer. Because again, as Nintendo continues to go down its path of saying, how do we keep piracy at bay, they eventually get to the point where, well, the less people find out about it, the less they're going to do it. And that means, I suspect, and I'll make an official prediction, because I predicted the whole thing with the Mig Switch distributors getting sued out of the universe has happened. And my next prediction is at some point, there's going to be a reckoning with content creators that create a lot of awareness and outright promotion of basically devices that are, loaded with ROMs. So, whether or not, if you're another content creator and you see this and you choose to heed that concern, that's on you. I'm not your mother. I'm not your father. I don't really care whether you do it or not, but I'm not going to be surprised if the next set of lawsuits takes out some of your favorite YouTube channels. Just saying. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm sure they're going to be a real doozy. I can take it on the chin. I'm a big boy, as you might imagine. If you actually like what you're hearing and you think it's bold, consider liking and subscribing. But as always, I'll see you next time on It's All Duggan Games.